Welcome to the Chuck Shoot Podcast. My guests today are Mark and Kim Hilinski. They are the parents of Washington State quarterback Tyler Hilinski. So Tyler was a very bright young star at Wazoo. He had already made some amazing plays in his playing time there, and he was likely to make a huge jump the following year into the starting quarterback. Unfortunately, Tyler became a victim of mental illness, and he died by suicide. And this tragedy shook not only his team, but I think the whole school and really the sports world and really the whole country. I mean, if you followed the story and you heard about this, I mean, it was heartbreaking. And obviously, affected his family the most. But his parents started Hilinski's Hope. This is a nonprofit foundation with the goal of keeping Tyler's memory alive. But they do so much more than that. They have, they're raising awareness and reducing the stigma of mental illness, and also educating people about what they can do. So I was listening to a podcast right after I did this interview. It's called The Mindset Mentor with Rob Dial. And I think this happened to line up with the interview I just did. And he was talking about how, right now the world needs leaders. And, usually when you're feeling bad, you're thinking about yourself. And when you feel good, it's because you're focusing on purpose, like the purpose that we, have in this world. It's usually for most people that purpose involves helping somebody in some way. And that's why I think what the Hilinskis are doing is so great. And I'm just glad that I could give them a forum to tell their story. And I hope this opens up some eyes to mental health and how important it is. The biggest takeaway I hope you get is that if you're struggling with depression or anxiety, reach out and ask for help. If you feel like you did not get that help, just keep asking. Ask different people, but don't give up. Likewise, if you're worried about somebody else that you think is going through a tough time, keep reaching out to them. Don't give up. I think that Hilinski's story resonates. I hope that it resonates with some of you and creates a discussion and maybe makes you think about either yourself, that maybe you're struggling and you need help, or somebody that you know who may be struggling. And I think they've already helped so many people. And so hopefully this can help some more people. Even if this episode helps one person, I think that's amazing.
Hi, Charles. Hey, this is Kim. Or is it Charles or Chuck? Which one do you prefer?
Chuck is good. Yeah, Charles is my birth name, but everybody calls me Chuck.
Yeah, my dad is a Charles, and he always went by Chuck, too. Exactly. And so Mark's right here with me, too.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Hi, Chuck. How are you?
Good. So you guys ready?
We are, yeah. We are together. We're have my cell phone speaker, and I think most of the podcasts we've done before we've done them this way too, unless they're video as well. But we like to do it from the same phone and sitting next to each other. That way, we sort of can tell who's going to answer the question, and we don't end up talking on top of each other.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Sounds good. So, here's what I'd like to do is maybe just talk a little bit about you guys and then a lot about Tyler. And then, of course, follow up with everything, all the good things that you're doing with Hilinski's Hope.
Okay. Sure.
Okay.
That's fine.
So Mark is an entrepreneur, and Kim, I didn't realize this. You're a lawyer.
Yeah. Well, not really anymore. I mean, I've been practicing since 90 in California. And then we moved to South Carolina last year, and you have to take the bar again. There's not a lot of reciprocity, but not very many states offer that. So I was like, you know what? I did it for almost 30 years. I'm done.
Okay. And then, so how did you two meet?
At a swimming pool. It was I was always a swim instructor and lifeguard through college, and so was Mark. We were at the same pool. And it was the last summer before I was going to law school, and I thought, you know what, I'll never probably ever have a job working outside again. So I'm going to, before I start in the fall, I'm going to do one last, gig as a life instructor or lifeguard and swim instructor. And Mark happened to be the pool manager.
Oh.
So that was it.
Okay. Yeah. So you two fell in love. You got married. You had your first son was Kelly. And then a few years later, May 26, 1996, Claremont, California, Tyler is born. And you said that he was the biggest of the three boys, weighed in at 10 pounds.
10 pounds, 10 ounces.
10, yeah, and 24 inches. Is that's above average for a baby? I don't know what average is for.
I think so. It felt above average. I can see that for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was really big, chubby, and long too. But they were all pretty big. What, 9 pounds, just shy of 10 pounds, both Kelly and Ryan, and all of them were about 24 inches or so. So I'll tell you what, when they're that big, you feel like they're not so little. They're still little, but you don't feel as casual holding them, and so it was actually good for us.
Yeah. Was he a happy baby? Was he a fussy baby? Do you remember that?
Well, he was the easiest of the three, right? Not fussy at all.
Okay.
Mark always says he's just, content either sitting on our hips or laying on our chest or, just sitting on our laps. He was just that kind of kid. And just, beautiful on top of it all, which
yeah.
So much easier.
And so from the moment he could hold a ball, he was always holding a ball, and he slept with a baseball glove because he liked the way it smelled.
Exactly. I do remember that. That was at our first Claremont house. And we walk in to see him. He's sleeping there with his glove, kind of had it tucked in between his arms. And I remember asking him the next morning, he said, "It just smells so good."
And he also liked basketball. He ended up shooting a lot of basket after basket in the hoop in the family driveway.
Yeah, we had this great story actually about him. They all went to Catholic in Claremont, and that's where we went to mass too. And he never got in trouble. He was sort of the teacher's pet. They all loved him, and but he did do something one day, and I can't remember what it was. It probably wasn't significant, but I remember picking him up from school and telling him that he had to sit at the dining table, which was actually right up against the driveway. You could look out of the window and see the hoop in the driveway. And I came around the corner from the kitchen, and there he was with his elbows on the windowsill and his chin, just sort of resting in the palm of his hand, staring out at the basketball hoop. And I just, I kept walking by, and he just wouldn't budge. And I finally said, "Okay, Tyler, go shoot your hoop." Just so sweet,
So he was described as a little bit of a goofball, kind of a mama's boy, almost, and really kind of a homebody, right? But they're also very down to earth.
Oh yeah, he definitely a homebody. All of our kids really are sort of homebodies. I mean, they like to go out, they have their friends, but they also just like to hang out at home. And we're big movie watchers.
Yeah.
Going to the movies, watching them at home, whatever. We just love doing that together. And Tyler was probably, out of all of our kids, maybe Ryan too, he loved the movies the most.
What were some of his favorite movies? Do you remember?
Yeah, Mark probably knows. I mean, he liked the goofball one too, right, Mark?
Yeah, he liked the funny movies. He liked the Will Ferrell movies. He liked the books he read were sort of the young adult sort of mystery fantasy collection, and easy read, sort of story based, easy read. But he wanted to be a director at one point. He wanted to tell stories, and he thought that might be a really neat way to do it. And so as he was playing football, and there's not a lot of schools that specialize in movie filmmaking and stuff. So he had his eye on USC a little bit. And, but as he got to Washington State, he sort of, flipped over to maybe wanting to coach, and he thought he could be really effective being a coach, which he didn't really seem, that was never really a thing, growing up, or he was a great leader, but, and he was really smart, whip smart about football and the playbook and all that stuff. But I think as he got older, he saw the, at least what he told me, he saw the opportunity to help other people. And, he thought that might be a better thing. So yeah, he liked them all. I mean, he liked the he liked the
Lincoln is the one that I remember the most. That I'd come home from court, or Mark would come home from work, and sometimes there would be Tyler sitting there watching Lincoln for the 12th time.
Wow.
Movies that actually, again, he liked the silly movies, but movies that actually, meant something. He learned a lot from them. But we have these memories too of this is how he learned how to play poker. He would watch ESPN and all the Texas Hold'em tournaments and the poker tournaments, and we used to think, oh my gosh, how does this kid know how to play poker at 4 or 5 years old?
Oh,
and,
wow!
Why is he watching it all the time on television? I think just the cards, and it was not that he was great at it, but it was interesting to him.
Yeah, that's so. What age did he get into football then?
Well, he started playing. Kelly, I coached the team, 7 to 9-year-olds, and Kelly was 8. Tyler was, almost 7, and they played on the same team together. But Tyler was so much smaller, age-wise, that a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old can be very big gaps and stuff. So he started playing then. But Tyler played. He was really great at a lot of things, and I don't, but he was just naturally kind of athletic. So he was great at soccer. He'd be the top goal scorer, guy on the team. His basketball, he'd be the high scorer there, and loved to compete, loved to play baseball. He hit home runs with a broken thumb. I mean, he just loved to be doing something athletic and sports related. He didn't really get into skiing or surfing or snowboarding or anything like that. He liked a lot of the team sports. He liked golf. He played with my parents when we would go see him in Arizona. And he loved to just sort of go to the range, and that would be something that he and I could do. And of the three, he's the only one that really sort of liked doing it. They all do it, but they burn through, 50 balls and time to go do something else. And Tyler could sit and, work through an hour or two and have a lot of fun. So he was really good at a lot of things. He liked football. But he went through a stage where, because he was playing on Kelly's teams where Kelly was so tall, we would use him as the quarterback, and Kelly wasn't as athletic, so he could throw far, that kind of stuff. So Tyler would play receiver or running back or whatever. Sort of there.
And wasn't Tyler Kelly's backup QB in high school at one point?
Yeah, in high school he was.
Yeah.
At Notre Dame High School he was. Tyler went to two different high schools. We were out in the valley in California, and Kelly went to Notre Dame High School, and Tyler was two grades younger. So as a freshman,
he played on the freshman team.
Yeah, so he was a okay. So, but yeah, and go on. Sorry.
Well, there's a big the whole thing in high school football in California was you really wanted to have your sophomore and junior years as your primary tape years for college football. So you wanted to go somewhere where you could play as a sophomore. If you couldn't play as a sophomore, you absolutely had to play as a junior, and you had to play really well. Senior seasons, pretty much all the recruiting was done. So he had, he was on an undefeated, freshman team on Notre Dame, which Notre Dame was really good in the Valley League. And Kelly did great there and had a lot of fun. But we moved back to Claremont for other reasons, and us and Tyler ended up at Upland High School, which was a very big, division. Well, the divisions are different now, but in the top division, they were, one of the top 5 conferences in the league. So he got a lot of competition there, won that job, and had a phenomenal, junior season, and just enjoyed it. won a bunch of games, set a bunch of records. And
so that's when the colleges start sniffing around, and he got offers from Cal and Utah State and obviously Wazoo. So why did what made him decide on Wazoo?
Well, I don't, Wazoo was his first, it was his first big Division I offer, and he liked the idea of playing in the Pac-12. But I think specifically Washington State and Coach Leach, when Tyler was recruited, Coach Wilson would come up and watch him throw and talk to our head coach and talk to us a little bit and talk to Tyler. And he said, with Coach, you really have to be able to throw the ball 150 times a day without injuring yourself, because that's all we do is throw.
Right.
And so, right. So, I mean, you can, Mike or Coach Leach, many comments on this kind of stuff. Tyler had a really good arm. He had a super accurate arm. He was very mobile. For 6'4", 220, he was really pretty quick. So I think he liked the idea of playing at Washington State because that system, it really goes back to this. Tyler is a backyard football guy. He wants to play offense all the time, right? So it's let me throw, whatever. At school, during recess, out with his brothers on Thanksgiving weekend, or on his high school or college football team, he wants to throw. And you also know that Coach Leach gives them a play, and it's really a suggestion. And each play is a pass play with a run play backup. And Tyler would just never check into the run very often. Luke would do it. He just didn't do it. Like, Coach jokes about it, but why would I hand it to a guy that's a foot away than when I can throw it to a guy that's 12 yards away, further, closer to the end zone? All of those little jokes and stuff. But that's sort of how Tyler thought anyway. So I think the idea of going there and doing that. Now, Cal was interesting because Cal came on later, but the recruiting process with Cal, he had been there. He went to junior day. He went to camp there. We flew up and went to a camp. He talked to Coach Franklin, who was the offensive coordinator there, and a bunch. And he didn't get his offer until after he had already committed to Wazoo, and he didn't like the idea of decommitting. He thought, the Cal name might be a little bit stronger. This is what what kids go through anyway. Like, but I mean, at the end, I think he really liked the coaches and he liked the people, and he liked Wazoo, and he was just going to make the best of it. And if you piece all this stuff out, which is really important to the guys that are being recruited at quarterback, is Luke is probably going to go in the draft after his junior year and not stick around, and that'll give him more opportunity, and he can fight for the job and all that, that stuff.
Right.
And then that didn't happen, of course. And then we had 2017 season, which was sort of a mixed bag. He got in a couple times and I thought played just amazingly well. But you have to stop the other guys from scoring too.
Right. So with Mike Leach, part of the reason he went to Wazoo is Mike Leach. Can we take a tangent for a second? Do you have any good Mike Leach stories? I love a good Mike Leach story, like something that maybe isn't in the press.
Well, I mean, I don't know if have we started this?
I think we are. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, you know what I remember, and this is, I think, part of the reason why Tyler chose Washington State is, in our family, we go on a lot of walks and a lot of bike rides. That was sort of our thing. We lived in this town in Claremont that was, the village was just down the street. You could go and you could get, a smoothie, you could get a yogurt, you could get a slice of pizza. It was all the movie theater. We always walked to the movie theater. But a lot of times Tyler and I would go for a walk or a bike ride. It'd be 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and the phone would ring, and it would be Coach Leach, and they would be on the phone for an hour and a half, all through our entire walk. We'd end up getting, some pizza, but he'd still be talking to Coach Leach. And they would talk about anything. And honestly, I don't really remember them talking about football so much. It was just, they would talk about stories. They'd share stories about, each other's childhood. And I do remember that, just enjoying listening to them and their conversations and, watching Tyler smile as he was talking to Coach. I know it's probably Mark.
That's crazy because I always thought the head coaches of a D1 football team would just be way too busy. A lot of the recruiting would be put off on the assistants. That's amazing that he spent an hour. Wow.
Yeah, it was great.
Remember, Mike doesn't have an offensive coordinator or a quarterback coach.
That's true. That's true. That's all him.
But a lot of these places, they have, several guys that are important. And I think, Coach Leach would go on his walk at Washington State, and that's when he would be able to get on the phone. He wouldn't have anybody pulling at him. He's surrounded by, guys, Super Dave and some of those guys that sort of manage his schedule and stuff. But it's hard. We've been on trips with him where Ryan, I think when Ryan had his visit up there, we sat and we were talking about his pieces of 8, and we were well past, the visit, and practice had started. Tyler had already left. Tyler came by and grabbed some stuff out of Coach's office, and they were trying to get him out of there. But you could just, if you could just sit and watch, they don't tell him it's time. They just sort of try to, circle the wagons and get him out there. But man, when he wants to talk about pirates and pieces of 8 and all that stuff, he's just going to do it, and everything else is going to have to wait. But there's a million stories. I think the funny one, which is, I don't think it's out there, and it's most of them for us is always about Luke. Luke was, and we've talked to Luke obviously since then and about this and stuff. But
Luke Falk, the other quarterback,
right?
Luke Falk, sorry. So Luke was a much more serious guy. And Coach likes to drift off. And so they'd have these competitions because Luke would get more and more mad. He wanted to go in, do the work, and get out. And so the quarterbacks had sort of an agreement. I think this has been told before, but they have an agreement. Don't ask him a question. Like when he's done, let's just everybody don't say anything, get up. And so they would do this. And then Tyler at the end of those would always go, Coach, I don't know. I don't understand whatever the question is. I don't understand why, cover 2 always gets disguised this way or that. Oh, well, let me tell you. First of all, back in, wherever, Minnesota, when they first thought, he would just randomly go off on these camps. And they would do it sort of as a needling thing to Luke. But
that's funny.
But all in good fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
I think the funniest one though, Chuck, really is, and you have to have him. He's the one that Tyler does a good impression of him, but when he thinks that you've missed an open receiver, he has a tendency to kind of exaggerate it. He would always say, Luke, if you forgot how to throw the football, kick the fucking thing to him. He's wide open. What do you do? Right?
That is funny.
Anyway.
So
funny.
So Tyler chooses Wazoo. He gets to Wazoo. The first couple of years, like you said, he's kind of the backup to Luke Falk. How was he getting antsy, waiting for his turn those first few years, or did he enjoy his time at Wazoo?
He had a great group of friends. Most of them were on the football team. And so his teammates were also his good friends too, and they were also his roommates. So, I think he wanted to get on the field, and Mark can go more in depth in that. But I think he really enjoyed his time up there. We know he was homesick. We do remember the first few weeks. He sort of figured out that he really missed being at home and being with his family. But he battled through that, and again found that great group of friends and teammates. And as far as getting on the field, I think every competitive athlete, wants their day on the field, right? Wants their time. But I didn't talk to Tyler as much about football as Mark did, and we could elaborate on that more.
I think like anybody, I mean, like Tim said, they want to play. Tyler and I would watch his his practice tape, every other week or so when they would be in season or when they had camps and stuff. And he'd call me and I'd get a chance to log on and watch some of the practice throws or some of the drills or whatever they did. And he'd point out stuff that he needed to fix and things he could do better and so forth. But one thing that coach always taught them or tried to was you really just have to focus on yourself and your team. And you can't really, it's not your job or his job to worry about what Luke's doing or what Anthony's doing or any of that. And so I think Tyler was really good at that. He was anxious because we would always come and see him and he felt like it was a wasted trip if he didn't get to play and all that stuff. And we just told him, we just loved being there and seeing him after the games and hanging out with him over the weekend and that kind of stuff. So football mattered. It was fun. It was something we all did, but it wasn't the reason we went. It was to go see Tyler. And then as he played, that last year, as he got a chance to play, when the game wasn't, either when Luke would get hurt or the game was sort of out of control the wrong way, they try to wake up, the quarterback room by putting in a new guy. So you have obviously the Boise State game, which, wasn't a perfect game by any stretch. There was some, but it was in the end, right? It was a win, big needed win.
And before that, he had his first touchdown when he was a sophomore at the Arizona game. It was a 71-yard bomb to Craycraft. And I remember that game because it was a blowout and it's kind of like you said, they put him in and he didn't hand the ball off and run the clock out. He threw a bomb. So he must have just been antsy.
I think his final stats were like 15 for 17, 170 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, they just, and then it's funny, then a year later against Arizona, we're down by 21 again in the first half. And Tyler goes in at the end, right at the last drive we had before the halftime. And we marched the ball all the way down and score, close the gap a little bit. Then we kicked off, if I remember right, and they ran it all the way back and kicked a field goal. So it only meant 4 points. And then he threw for 509 yards or something in the second half and had 4 touchdowns, but also four picks. So,
right. But before that game, let's go back to that Boise State game. And Kim, I think, was at the game, but they put him in the first. I think they benched Falk and they put Tyler in, and then they put Falk back in, but then Falk went down in the fourth quarter, so they put him in with 10 minutes left, and they were down 31-10. And somehow he leads this crazy comeback, quadruple overtime, wins the game, and they actually put him up on the player's shoulders. That's pretty rare, I think, for a team to do that.
It was, it was magical to be there. And like Mark said, we would go to the game when we knew Tyler wasn't going to start. We never really thought he was going to play unless somebody got injured or, like Mark said, it was sort of a lopsided score. So we had to divide our games because we had to stay home with Ryan unless Ryan had a bye because he was playing on Friday night. So our whole deal was, you watch as much as you could of Ryan's game, book at the Los Angeles airport, take the red eye, land in either Pullman or Spokane and, get over to the game, usually right before the game started. So that just happened to be my weekend.
Wow.
Mark stayed home and I went up and I saw Tyler right before the game started. The team does this walk through all the fans and I got to see Tyler during that walk. And then the next thing I know, and then the stands and Mark was texting me, Tyler's warming up. Is he going in? And I said, I can't tell. You can be better than us. And the next thing we know, he's going in, and I'm, fielding texts from Mark and my friends really from all over the place as they're watching Tyler, go into the game. And it was pretty magical. I think, of course, I love that they won, and it's special for him and the team that they did it in triple overtime and that he did get, hoisted on their shoulders. But I think the part that I loved the most was spending time with them after the game, and we walked arm in arm, back to the hotel room, my hotel, and just talked about he couldn't believe it happened, and he just was so excited and smiling. But he just wanted to share the moment after the game with me, and then make sure that he was right on the phone calling his dad and his brothers to see what they thought too.
Wow. Yeah, that was an amazing game. And then, going back to the second Arizona game, he threw for over 500 yards, but he did have 4 interceptions. They lost the game, and he took a rough hit in that one. And then you guys said that, and I mean, I could see the tape. He looked very sad and somber in the press conference. And it was kind of after that game that he started getting more distant. And that's when you saw the change in his behavior, right? Less contact, and the contact was getting shorter.
Yeah, I mean, some of this stuff is it's imprecise, but for that game, the crappy thing about that game, of course, is that was his job. His job was to go out there and try to win the game, right? It was to lead the team back, and there were so many spectacularly positive moments, and there was a couple of forced throws, and then you let guys run down the field 80 yards a pop, and you have to come back and chase that. You're going to also be, you're coming from behind.
Mm-hmm.
He said after that game, if I could just get in when the score's 0-0, it would be. And he was sort of joking, but afterwards, it wasn't just Tyler. I mean, in the grouping of the parents and stuff downstairs waiting for him to get out of their meeting and leave, the whole place was just devastated and somber. And, there was so much, we came back we were winning that game. So down by 21 again. And we were up at one point on Tyler's second running touchdown. We were ahead, and we just didn't win the game. So he did. He got hard. And afterwards he was as mad and miserable as I've ever seen him after a football game. And I'm sure, a lot of people, us included, not every game's going to end like Boise State, and it's great to be competing. You want to compete and stuff, but I mean, he felt very strongly that it's always his. It was never his fault that they won, but it was always his fault that they lost. And picks do that. I think the last one was a pick six. The game was over, but I think that just solidified it. And yes, his anger, if you can, is what I sense. Not just his anger underneath sort of those questions in the press conference. The weight of the world was on his shoulder, and it was just like the bowl game. I felt like those two interviews were nearly the same. The way he answered questions and the way he kind of held himself accountable, and then just privately, he said it's just embarrassing. It's embarrassing to lose like that and not be able to finish it and stuff. So yeah, and then I think, your comment about, and we've said this obviously, it's less noticeable while it's happening, but it's easy to dissect looking backwards. But what was the other part that was happening is between then and the bowl game prep. So, we had a lot of things going on at that school, including Coach Leach, interviewing it all over the country for a new job. We had two of his favorite receivers, were transferring, and all of this as he was sort of coming into thinking about 2018, it looked like, things were pretty tough. So he was on the phone. I remember being on the phone with him, and he was calling Coach, who was at the airport, and he was flying back from Tennessee or to Tennessee, and he had one impression, the media had a different impression, but it didn't really matter. But my point is, all of that sort of happening. They're doing bowl practice. Luke's hand, I think it was his wrist, not healing well. He's starting, he's going to start, then he's not going to start, then he's getting all the reps in practice, then he's not. So there's a lot of stuff going on. So it's hard to know how much of that was just pulling away at him, you know, and taking time so his answers were shorter and stuff. But when you reflect on it and think about the way he did certain things, what he said, the way he said it, there was a lot more. I overslept. I forgot my phone. They were just the excuses that Tyler's smarter than that, you know. But he wasn't spending much time explaining himself anymore. He was just sort of being, you know, depending on which view you took, either slipping away and being more quiet, or he was being pulled in so many other directions. You know, he has a private life and a girlfriend and a former girlfriend and friends in Pullman, friends in California. You know, the game's coming. He's got everybody wants to come down and watch him play. They're all wishing him well. Meanwhile, we're playing Michigan State, who was, you know, on a roll, and we had a tough game there too. And he was despondent about the loss there. I know that when we went to Mexico. I mean, he didn't really shake out of that. But that's what we thought. We thought it was, you're sad. You lost the bowl game. Of course you're sad. It's okay. It's okay to be sad. Was he depressed? Did he get hit too hard in the Arizona game? Did that change things? It's speculative because you really need data to make those leaps. But it's very easy to sort of tie them together now, right? Those things sort of flow in a timeline. And trust me, if we knew for sure, we'd certainly tell everybody. But we're in the same position of completely to this day, Chuck. Wake up this morning, I still have no idea. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. Yeah. And I don't know why I couldn't talk to it.
There was at one point in between the Arizona game and the bowl game, I think there was a Utah game, and his brother Kelly was there and talked to him after that game, and Kelly kind of called him out on his kind of being distant, and they had a really good talk, and I think at that point Kelly maybe thought things were better.
Yeah, I have a memory of that too, and I think Powder may have said to Kelly, you know, I'm just sad, and I don't know why I'm sad. And we didn't really know that, or that they had that conversation until after Tyler had passed. And, you know, I look back to that time when he came to our house in California after the bowl game. We had about, I think, a week before we left for Cabo. And he said, hey, Mom, let's go shopping. I'm going to hang out with my California friends, and I want to get some new clothes for Cabo and maybe bring some new clothes back to Washington. And so, I was buying new clothes, getting new shoes. We were doing those kind of things. We were packing for our trip. When someone does something like that, you're absolutely not thinking they don't want to be here tomorrow. Right. And not just the clothes, but I think just the planning part. And I'm with Mark. I wake up every day and first of all, we still can't believe he's gone. Can't believe it at all. And then it's just miserable. We're just miserable about it. Try not to be for the other two. But it's hard when you're missing each other.
Yeah. So, and I didn't know this, that he was, his friend CJ Dimry, who was a wide receiver at Wazoo, he had actually opened up to Tyler about his own depression. And in fact, Tyler would take him to counseling appointments.
Yeah, I'd take him, and CJ didn't have a car at that time, so Tyler would drive him. He loved CJ. Tyler and CJ were inseparable up there and would throw together when they were down in California. CJ's parents lived in San Diego, Carlsbad area. So they'd meet each other. I remember going and driving Tyler with them to go meet CJ. And they threw at some park in Newport Beach, and it must have been 1,000 degrees, or it felt like it. And, I remember being so happy because Tyler, you could just tell how comfortable Tyler was around CJ. And they talked easily. They got along. So that was CJ, and CJ was his roommate on top of that. him in Kirkland. And so, so Tyler drove CJ to these appointments, and we talk about it when we go out and tell Tyler's story on campus and stuff. But here's Tyler. He loves CJ. He knows CJ was struggling a little bit and wanted to get things off his chest, and he thought counseling was helping. They stayed. Tyler would go get burgers or pizza or whatever, and they'd sit in the car after the appointment and talk about it. And so Tyler understood that was something people did when they needed to and knew where to go, in fact, right? Hey, can you give me an appointment? It might be good for me or whatever. But here's what I also know about Tyler. CJ's mom died from cancer when he was very young, and that's what he was mostly talking about in Tyler's mind. And that's a quote-unquote legitimate reason to go to a therapist in Tyler's mind. Tyler having uncontrollable, difficult, depressed, anxious thoughts, not based on, hey, my parents are fine, my brothers are great, I have money, I have food, I have a school, I don't have any physical ailments, I'm not injured, all of that stuff. I know, knowing Tyler, I'm sure that weighed on him. Like, why do I need help when this guy lost his mom when he was young? That makes sense, but doesn't make sense to me. And I think he was suffering, in silence and not wanting to tell anybody because he didn't feel like he deserved it, which is a load of crap, obviously, and that's what we're out talking about with Hilinski's Hope. But man, how do you miss it? A family that's that close, that does so many things together, that watches each, helicopter parents, call us any names you want. I don't really care. we were there, just the number of hours out of the day spread out over a college career. We were there. We had so much fun. We'd hang around. We loved the Craycrafts, and we loved the Sweet family. And so just sick and sad about that. We loved being up there. And so, if Tyler had something to say, and I should say, in high school, you tell your kids this all the time. I don't care where you're at, what the problem is, what you're doing. You call me, say you need a ride home, no question, we'll deal with it in the morning, right? That kind of, I'm not going to yell and scream. I'm just going to come and get you. Tyler used that one time in high school, and he was uncomfortable at some party, whatever. He said, he called his mom, remember when you said, yeah, of course. We went and got him, came home, and we talked a little bit. It was just, he didn't like the people, and he was uncomfortable there. So our small history with Tyler was, he was good at that stuff.
Yeah.
He if he felt uncomfortable, he wouldn't go. If he didn't like where he was at, he'd extricate himself. If he really needed help, he'd call his parents and we'd help him get out of it. So his history was one of, wow, this kid kind of got it all, not all figured out, but he's got it all together. He has the tools. He's growing up. He's maturing. Has some great people around him. What more can you ask as parents?
Yeah, no, I mean, and everyone always described him as that was one thing I when I've did my research, everyone always described him as happy and positive. And one phrase I kept hearing repeatedly was he lit up the room. I heard that from multiple people that said that.
It's true, right? Yeah. I mean, he lit up the room our family was always in, right? If there was, any little bit of an argument going on, or each of us pushing each other, not physically, but, upset with one another or something, Tyler didn't like it. And he made sure that he sort of calmed everybody down, made everybody make up if there was any kind of arguing or disappointment. And so he was sort of that, he just made everybody feel better.
And it wasn't just his family. I mean, we heard the same thing, Chuck, all the time. And it was the quarterback room. And it was just this sense of happiness or ease or comfort. But when you push people about that and ask them, it was usually because Tyler sort of had this positive, uplifting quality. So when he was with you guys or in a room, he would suck all the negative energy out, and all you're left with is just all these kind of happy thoughts. And maybe goofy, maybe fun, whatever, but you just felt more comfortable when Tyler was in the room because things sort of always went a positive way when he was there. So then we pushed a little deeper, and people said Tyler was always interested in me. I knew when Tyler walked in the room, I would be able to, maybe even subconsciously, but I knew I was going to be asked by Tyler how my day was, what's going on with me, and how are my parents, and how's my sport, that kind of stuff. And that was professors and students and teammates and roommates and friends and family members that when you got together under this ridiculously sad, event after he passed, those are the stories we all heard. And you tend to be more gracious when people pass. I get that. But if you factor all that out of it, you're left with this kid made everybody else better, made everybody else happier. Everybody wanted to be around him. They were never uncomfortable. And so which is, there's a lot of kids like that, right? Our parents love their kids. We're no different. But there is something very unique about the amount, the quantity of people, the quantity of legitimate stories, not just misremembering that Tyler was happy all the time. He wasn't happy all the time. Of course, he had things that he dealt with and problems that he had to solve and things. But his outwardly appearance to everybody else was always one of compassion, love, kindness. He was kind. He just didn't have a lot of bad things to say about anybody.
Wow.
As competitive as he was, he still wouldn't go down the road of this guy's no good and this person can't help and I'm better than this. It never was about Tyler. It was always about in football, it was always about the team success. And that's just, I don't have to make it up now. That's how he was. He wanted everybody there to count on him. He wanted everybody on his team to know that he was going to do everything he could to make those games and their lives better. And I think he did it for 21 years.
So let's walk through, I know this is going to be difficult, but let's walk through the end of what happened. So, I'm trying to do some of the research here and piecing it together myself. And there's a lot of stuff that I learned in hearing these interviews. So basically what happened is he went out, this is after, he'd been kind of somber, like you guys had said, he'd been a little bit more distant, but he went shooting with some teammates, and it sounded like everything was fine during that time when they went shooting. But then he later stole one of the guns, and how long did he hold on to it? Was it several days? Because the gun was missing, and they were asking, "Hey, does anyone have this gun? Where is it?" Nobody knew where it was, right?
Well, that's sort of the BS about all of this, right? So so all that's factually correct. Like, he went up there, and the guys that he really liked, Peyton Ford and a few others, said, "Hey, we're going to go out and shoot shotguns and clay pigeons, right? They're just going to throw stuff up in the air and blow and shoot it." So keep in mind, Tyler's never held a firearm, never shot a loaded weapon, never had any training, never had any interest in hunting or marksmanship of any kind. Mm-hmm. He went out with them. They all said he couldn't shoot, the ground. He was that bad at it. And in that bag, so the way I understand it is they had a duffel bag full of shotguns and shells, and at the bottom of the bag they also had, one kid had an AR-15 and live ammunition there. They didn't shoot that, according to them, out there. And they were done. They put the bag back in the car. They drove back to the apartment. Tyler went back to his apartment. This is where it gets a little confusing. Tyler was moving in with these guys that weekend. So he had technically had his old apartment that CJ and Kirkland had moved out of. Oh. And he had keys to that. And he also had the new apartment that he was moving into. Okay. So when he came back from Mexico, he went to the new apartment, put all his stuff in there, his clothes that his mom and I washed in Mexico. That's all he had in that apartment. And that's where the guns were. But when they left, somehow Tyler managed to take the AR-15 and some live ammunition back to the old apartment, and he hid it in the outdoor storage area.
The closet, the closet off of his balcony. There was a closet out there.
And didn't they find a bullet hole in the car or something? Like, did they figure out what that was? He accidentally shot it, maybe?
That's what they think.
Yeah.
There was it was in the driver's side door, and there was a bullet hole. They think it might have been an accident as he was taking it out of the car.
I mean, this is an AR-15. I'm not a gun expert.
Yeah,
it's a high decibel, loud, machine, right?
Mm-hmm.
That loud noise. He had that gun for 3 days before he used it to kill himself. Now, we on our talks we say the same thing. We're not anti-gun. We have no problem with anybody doing anything that they need to do, except please do it responsibly. If this gun had been trigger locked, if this gun had been locked in a case like most responsible gun owners have, there's zero chance Tyler would have been able to use it to hurt himself. There's also research, Chuck, that says when suicide attempters fail using a firearm, they're the least likely group to then try another method. Meaning, well, he did, the gun didn't fire, so he jumped off the building. There's not a lot of research data that shows that's accurate. And so it's hard to sit here without getting more and more upset and angry about the fact that those guns weren't properly taken care of. On Washington State campus, it's very clear in student housing, it's illegal to have those, first of all. Second of all, it's supposed to be stored at the police station, and you can check them in or out 24 hours a day. And lastly, they should be trigger locked or case locked at whatever time. Several hours after they got back from shooting, they called Tyler. We don't know where Tyler was at the time. He wasn't with them. And they said, "We're missing the AR-15. Did you see it?" No. Tyler went over there, and they looked for 2 hours through the new apartment. Obviously, Tyler knew where it was.
Wow.
Looked and looked and looked and couldn't believe it. So if you're missing an AR-15 and live ammunition, please report it stolen when you can't find it after 4 or 5 hours. That's another thing, right? If we had home police interviewing Tyler, breaking him down, breaking the guys down, where did it go, looking through, the old apartment, seeing what a disaster that was, that we could have put some of this stuff together. Woulda, coulda, shoulda, I get all that, but it's still an important point to know going forward for other people, I think.
Absolutely. So then he texted, I don't know if he texted anyone else, but I know he texted his high school girlfriend and he just said, "I'm sorry for everything." Was she must have been confused by that, right? Or was there more to the conversation?
No, I mean, I kind of know why that happened. He had been dating her for a few years, mostly all through the time he was a sophomore. So when he graduated to a year or two when he was at Washington State, and the bowl game in San Diego, just months before, not even a month, just a few weeks before he passed, she came down there to see him, and Tyler was also dating another girl at the same time. And the friends of this other girl, who's a volleyball player at the Washington State, texted this girlfriend and said, "Tyler's former girlfriend is down here. Oh my gosh." So that led into a little bit of confrontation. And I think Tyler felt bad that, he hurt his old girlfriend's feeling and his current girlfriend's feeling by seeing his old girlfriend. And basically they just went out to dinner at Spaghetti Factory in San Diego. So I think, he wanted to apologize to her. He felt bad. So he did text her that. But we had been texting Tyler from the time that he left Mexico until just the day that he died. We were texting about Mom's Weekend and the concert that was going to happen, and I was going to be up there just a few weeks later for Mom's Weekend up in Pullman, and talking about his move, and we went back and forth. Let me just get you movers, Tyler. No, Mom, I'm 21 years old. I can move myself out of my apartment into my new apartment. And he texted his brothers the night before he died. He was playing video games with both Kelly and Ryan. Kelly in Utah, where he was going to school. Ryan at home with us in California and Tyler up in Washington. And then, less than 10 hours later, he was gone.
Yeah. So, and then when they first called you, your initial reaction was maybe it was a car accident, because they just said he was missing. They didn't know what happened. And you guys thought it was maybe a car accident because he was a bad driver.
Yeah, he wasn't the best driver.
Well, we always worried about him driving. I mean, the weather's terrible up there most of the time. The roads are slick and slippery. He wasn't a great driver, meaning he was a conscientious driver, but he bumped into things here and there, not caused major accidents. He just sort of, was a little bit less than diligent when it came to parking his car and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's unclear to us still what anybody knew when they called, but they said that Tyler had missed practice in the morning, and the guys were out looking for him because they couldn't find his car wasn't at his apartment. They knocked on the door, he didn't answer, whatever, and the guys ended up breaking down the door before the cops came and found Tyler in the closet. So
right, so he shot himself with an assault rifle that he had stolen. And then the coach called you and said, Tyler's no longer with us. And Kim, you couldn't breathe. And Mark, you didn't want to believe it.
The coach called us. That was a state coach. It was Coach Huff. And called the first time to say that Tyler was missing, and they were putting out a missing persons report. And the first thing we did is we sort of just put Mark in a car and got him straight to the airport, because we thought, they're going to find Tyler, and one of us should be there when they find Tyler, whatever it was, whatever. If he got an accident, if something happened, one of us needs to be there. So Mark was at the airport, and I stayed back at home with Ryan, waiting by the phone. And I got the second call, might have been the third call from Coach Huff, and I didn't even know why he was no longer with us. Like, we didn't know at that point what happened, just that he was dead. And I'm not sure how Kelly found out. I can't remember.
Kelly was calling his friends, and I don't know which one. One of them told him, and then I was waiting for the flight. I was panicked, of course. I didn't want to get on the flight because I didn't want to be in a position where I couldn't know what was happening. And but as I was waiting for the flight, then Kelly called me or texted me, and he just said, "Dad," and I immediately knew that it was bad, and so I called him, and he was upset, and he was telling me what happened, and then I called Kim. Well, Ryan was texting me this whole time, saying, "Please come home," and I said, "I will," and then I talked to Kim, who for a minute just said, "Oh, Kelly doesn't know for sure, Mark. He's getting bad information, and he's jumping to conclusions and stuff." And it threw me because for a little bit I had just a little bit of hope, but I knew what Kelly said too. So I raced outside. I got in the car, and Ryan was calling me, and I got home. And I think we talked about later, but Kim was just in denial. She just didn't want to believe it. And by the time I got there, she was having a tough time breathing, and Ryan was with her, and we got her some help and stuff. But it's just as bad a day as you're ever going to have.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be my initial reaction too, just from what we've talked about and what kind of kid he was. You just wouldn't believe that. You wouldn't want to believe that something like that is true.
No, I mean, Coach Leach. So many people at Coach I remember talking to right away too, and he said, "Are you sure somebody didn't kill him? There's no way that Tyler did it." And it did. At one point you go through a lot of bad things, and your son's gone. Secondary is how he's gone.
Right.
The fact that he's gone is the worst news, and then that he died, and then we heard from the coroner. I got a call late that night, or we did, and she said that the coroner said that he left a note, and we have it here. So we kind of thought, oh my God, at least we're going to find out something. And we haven't released what it says, but it wasn't a dear dad and mom, here's what happened, this is why I have to go note at all. and it wasn't, there was no information of value to anybody else.
No specifics.
No,
nothing.
nothing.
And so
it was 3 words. I mean, there
oh
wasn't there wasn't much information in it, and we've never actually seen it. It's still in the sealed envelope that we got by FedEx from the Pullman Police Department. The coroner's report is still in there. I'm sure there are photos in there. It's in the safety deposit box. We've never opened it. We've never seen it. We probably never will.
Wow. And then they did an autopsy later of the Mayo Clinic, and they said that he had stage 1 CTE. They said that the medical examiner said he had the brain of a 65-year-old.
No. So,
Mark a little bit. What happened was is when we were in the coroner's, the funeral home in Pullman, and we were talking about what had happened, they said that they got a call from the Mayo Clinic, and the Mayo Clinic asked if they could have Tyler's brain to do an autopsy. And, we're numb at that point. We're, foggy, everything's blurry. But I do remember Mark and I looking at each other and saying, yes, absolutely, please.
Well, we were also getting requests. Tyler was a donor, and the only thing he could donate was his other cornea. And so we were getting those calls. I can't remember exactly. They weren't courtesy calls, but we had to consent. I don't know why, but maybe it was how he died or something. But so we gave that, and some lucky person was able to use his cornea. Great.
There's a young man, I think he's probably 25, 26 now, and from the Washington state area, and he has one of Tyler's corneas. And I think we got that call before we even went up to Pullman, because it was an immediate thing. So we had already agreed to donate Tyler's eye. And then the Mayo Clinic that request came when we were at the funeral.
Yeah. And then you didn't find the phone for 6 or 7 months. And then when you found it, you thought there'd be, again, you're trying to figure out why. You thought there'd be some clues, but there really wasn't much on the phone, right? He didn't look up depression or suicide or anxiety. He just looked up how to load an AR-15, how to clean it, and that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. I mean, the other part, he, so we have his iPad, we have his computer at that point, but we didn't have his phone. And there's still, what is it, 50 gigabyte of information on there. We have them on 2 terabyte, these big hard drives that we can access. And there's links to deleted text, there's links to deleted videos and pictures and things like that. And, it's very difficult to move through that information on the best days. And it's impossible on most days. So we've gone through the more recent history to get a sense that he didn't use that phone to look that information up for sure. It appears there were some other things right around the time he died, and then, as you say, and I think we've said obviously that it was only a few hours before he actually died that he looked up how to use it and load it, how to position it without hurting anybody else, and things like that. But one instance, so I had talked to the Elite 11 quarterbacks down in Nashville this year, a couple days ago, and I told them the story, and it's as close to a note, I think, as Kim and I get, which is Tyler was like every other 21-year-old. He didn't really keep track of passwords. He used the same ones over and over again. He used 11111, or all zeros or all threes or whatever, and some other ones that we knew, and his girlfriend knew, and his brothers knew, his teammates and roommates knew. We tried a couple of those before we had the phone. Celebrate helped us unlock the phone, and that's a really long, arduous process to run algorithms against basically 6 digits until it cracks, until it breaks. So when I got the phone back, the actual numbers that you used to unlock Tyler's phone were on a sticky note pressed on top of the phone. And when you look at those numbers, they don't look like anything. I mean, Kim and I looked at it over and over with my sister, or whatever. And everybody looked at it long enough until it didn't make any sense. There's never any part of his sort of password set that we've been used to. They look like random numbers until I think Kim and Christine and they called me, but figured out that the only real word that makes sense that correlates to those numbers is the word sorry. So if you type sorry in, it's 5 letters, and then you add an extra Y or a 9 or whatever. But that's and it was you can look at the metadata in the phone, and it was changed. It was changed before he died.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, but not a year before, right? This is relatively.
So he hid his phone in the apartment, and I guess he hid it. He dropped it in the floor heater.
Wow.
And he just dropped it right in there. And on the back of that phone was, that little pocket where you put your driver's license, credit card, school ID. So it wasn't found until I think it was that summer, and I got a call from the Pullman Police Department, and they said the individuals that just moved into Tatter's apartment found Tatter's phone. They were actually sitting on the couch, and they looked over and they saw something kind of shiny in this floor heater. So they reached into it and they pulled out Tatter's phone. They actually tried to contact me and through Twitter or Facebook. I'm terrible at checking those messages. So they ended up giving it to the police department, which was a good thing because they tested fingerprints. They tried to see if there was any information on there that they could retrieve and maybe would help to figure out what happened. And they did it, and we were up in Pullman just a few weeks later for a game where they honored Tyler, and the family was asked to raise the Coos flag, which is a tradition at the home football game. So we got the phone while we were there, and everything that Mark just talked about, what transpired after we got the phone, getting it to Celebrite, getting it to an attorney who reviewed the phone for all the words that we thought, would come up. And I don't know if Mark mentioned this, but if you think you're deleting something, you're really not. So like every Snapchat we learned, every single search that you've ever done, it's there. Even if you think you've deleted it, it's still there. So we got all the information that was on Tatter's phone, and it really did help us piece together what was going on the days or the weeks before.
Right. What I think Mark has said before is that he just didn't want to bother anybody with his own pain and depression and anxiety. In a weird way, because obviously this has caused a lot of pain, but in his mind, you thought he was thinking that he just wanted to, get away from it all and just not bother anybody by, calling someone up and saying, "Hey, I'm depressed. I need to talk."
Right. And, and so we're depressed, right? Mark and I are unbelievably sad. His brothers are really sad, but we've sort of come to realize that in what we've done with Hilinski over the last couple of years and talked to so many different medical health professionals is, yes, we're depressed, we're sad, but we're not really physically ill. We're not to that point where are mentally ill. We're not to that point where we'll take our own life. And I can't imagine what Tyler or anybody who takes their own life feels like, right? We're miserable. Just unbelievable.
Yeah, because Mark said that had a hard time getting out of bed, which I can imagine. Now it's been a couple years. How often? I mean, you talk about Tyler all the time. You've got Hilinski's Hope, but how often do you still think about Tyler? Like, can you go to a movie and watch a 2-hour movie and not think about him, or is he just always going to?
No. Yeah. No, it's
in every thought.
It's in every sort of waking moment. It's not that we sit there and stare out the window all the time and just think about him, and it can be positive. It can be positive. You're talking to Ryan, and he had a good practice. He threw well, and he said, "I threw." You know how Tyler used to do this or that. Yeah, I'm gonna do this or that. So some of those kind of conversations, but there for sure isn't an hour. You know, even if you're really into whatever it is you need to finish, like a presentation, preparing for this podcast, whatever, I can't get past 4 or 5 minutes. And
Wow.
without thinking about him, about wishing he was here, certainly. Maybe the bigger question I push away until late at night, where what really happened? What was he thinking? What was his last few weeks like? You know, this wasn't it. So I'm sure there's a lot of research out there. There's a lot of imperfect science, but there's a lot of really smart people working on these questions and problems. But the reality is, it wasn't impulsive in the sense he had the weapon he used to kill himself for more than, you know, he didn't go home, figure out how to use it and use it, right? He went home, he put it somewhere else, out of sight. He went to football practice, he played video games with his friends and brothers. He went out to eat with a girlfriend. He did all these other things for a few days, and then went back and ended his life. So, it's hard. That part doesn't leave your thoughts very often, very fast. So,
right. And then while this is going on, going back to Ryan, your other son, you guys had to do an SEC road trip, and that was obviously really hard. But Ryan threw his first touchdown at South Carolina. He broke down and cried, right? And that was the first time that he had cried through this whole thing.
It was actually his first touchdown in high school. So
his first touchdown.
Oh, sorry. That was at high school. Okay.
Tyler died January of Ryan's junior year. So the spring football, and then there was the 7-on-7 football, and then the actual tackle football that starts late August. And I'm pretty sure maybe Ryan had cried, and I know it was very sad, but Ryan describes it as he never truly broke down until after he threw that touchdown. And he did it right there on the football field, and you can see a just sort of break. And I think, keeping all of that in, keeping those emotions in, I know wasn't good for him, but that's how he dealt with it. And that's one of the things we learned, Chuck, as we went through therapy together and individually, is that we all grieve differently. And there's not really a right or a wrong way to grieve. And that's how Ryan grieved. That's how he missed his brother. He kept it in, and then finally he just couldn't keep it in anymore.
Yeah. Well, and then he's even said that he's opened up his direct messages to anybody that's struggling. Has he gotten a lot of messages or people reaching out?
Yeah, we worry about that too. But we didn't know that he had done that. We found out, and I think it's a wonderful thing that he does that. And he did. A lot of people reach out to him. A lot of people reach out to us through him. But you do worry that he takes on too much. But that's the path that he's chosen.
That's just Ryan's way of doing what he wished somebody had done for Tyler, right? If Ryan's not a therapist, he's a sad kid that lost his brother, who's trying to figure out his way in life. But I know his thinking is, well, if I'm the only person somebody has left to call, I don't want to say no to that and have something terrible happen. So the other sad part, of course, is it's not always taken. It's not everybody that's in trouble actually asks for help, obviously, and some people may use his generosity that way against them a little bit too, and so you have to be cautious about all that stuff. But I think he's doing the best he can with it. Yeah.
So this is the good part, is that you guys formed Hilinski's Hope. Kim and Kelly, you guys came up with a name, and the goal is to kind of drive down the stigma of mental health so that people can reach out and ask for help. Because I think mental illness and depression it's a lot more common than people think, not only in young people, but also collegiate athletics, which I didn't know that. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among college students, which is crazy to me.
And we didn't know it either. We didn't know any of the stats that we've learned since he died. Even just last night, we had this virtual mental health conference that strengthened stories, and we teamed up with the one-on-one athletes and Dan Morrison, which is out of Oregon State, and we held this virtual mental health conference, and there were 100-something student athletes. It was 4 student athletes in this conference, and I really didn't realize that so many of them are struggling. They have so much pressure on them. There's such a grind, and they've got to do well on the field or on the court, and they've got to do well in the classroom, and they've got to maintain these good grades and friendships and their family. And you look at student athletes, you think, oh, they have it all, right?
Yeah.
But really, what they do have, they do have a wonderful time playing the sport they love. But I also think they're under a lot of pressure and a lot of stress.
Chuck, I think you said when we did really. There's 3 parts to that, to the Hilinski Hope mission.
Mm-hmm.
Stigma reduction is a big part of it. But awareness, and what we're talking about right now is awareness, really. But the awareness piece is staggering because as you just, as you did your research, and we certainly have done ours, and those numbers are unbelievable. And the third part of the mission is to build programs that can help these guys. And we use a couple of speakers in this regard. And one of them, his name is Ross Zabo. He wrote the book called Behind Happy Faces, has a terrific TED Talk on the subject. He's a bipolar suicide survivor that it has really done amazing things in his life. But he has this very important sort of concept that he does really well and talks to the kids about. And that is, we can all be sad, right? We're all, if you lose a game, you break up with a girlfriend, it's of course it's natural to be sad. But there's a difference between sadness, like Kim's describing. Mm-hmm. We're incredibly sad, maybe even mildly depressed. But there's a big difference between that and clinical depression, which has been described by those that suffer from it as having a literal 800-pound gorilla, or elephant sitting on your chest. You can't breathe, you can't move, you can't think, you can't eat, and it comes in waves. And, in sports, you're used to physical injuries. You tear an ACL, it hurts like hell right then. It feels a little better in 6 hours. You go have surgery in a week, and you rehab it for a year, 6 months to a year. There's a course. Mm-hmm. Everybody responds to depression and anxiety, clinical diagnosable depression in a different way. And some of that is treated with medicine, some of it through therapy, most of it through both. But when your brain is the thing that's broken or the thing under attack, it's hard to have those people that are suffering understand it enough to even ask for help. And if you have stigma that's weighing in on it, like I don't know what my coaches will think, or my parents, or my friends, and you're not aware that this can really spin out of control into a life-threatening position for you or others. You heard self-harm and other harm is very real as well. That's why I think it's so important. And we don't know any of it. We're not mental health practitioners, but that's all we've done now for 2.5 years is be in this space with these really smart, talented people who are really, trying to work on a problem that's extremely difficult, complex, much more so than orthopedic injury. Not to put those down; those are all necessary, very real, and wouldn't for a moment say that. But this thing is a level of, an order of magnitude different, at least, from solving it, and that's difficult to hear, but it makes the impact of awareness and stigma reduction and program building and so forth that much more impactful because it's so desperately needed.
Right. And one way I think it's similar to other physical ailments is what I heard somebody say, a doctor, about it, is that, if you're having those suicidal thoughts and it feels so, heavy, like you said, the 800-pound gorilla, that, you need to go to the hospital. If you can't breathe, or you're having chest pains, you go to the doctor, you go to the hospital. It's emergency. It's the same way if you're having those heavy suicidal thoughts where it's taking over, you've got to go to the hospital.
Well, you just said it, and you can only imagine what those responses are, right? The hospital deals with life and death stuff, right? The emergency room. You show up and say, "This is what I'm feeling like," and somebody walks in and goes, "Oh my God, you're having a panic attack. You'll be fine." The condescending ways of, and this coming from an educated medical professional, although likely not a licensed psychologist trained in suicide prevention, right? So, and again, it's not picking on anybody. This is a societal response to, and has been for so long. We're just trying to shake up stronger. We're trying to delineate. There's a path by which people should feel absolutely okay to ask for help. And guess what? I hope they're wrong. I hope they don't need a lifetime of treatment and medication. But I'd certainly rather be right about that than wrong about thinking somebody needed help and died by suicide later. The stakes are way too high.
Exactly. Yeah. So tell me more about some of the stuff you're doing. I know you have the United podcast, which is conversations conversations for student athletes with psychologists and mental health professionals. And then there's the, in conjunction with the World Mental Illness Awareness Week, you guys are doing this 3-day thing where the college football teams are going to wear a green ribbon on the back of their football helmet with the goal to increase resources devoted to mental fitness, decrease the stigma, and honor the victims of mental illness such as Tyler, right?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you for doing so much research.
Right.
That's what I do.
Yeah, no, it's the best we've ever come across. I'll be honest.
Thank you.
So
we started the United. I'll just go into that really quick because here's what we were doing. We were taking probably 1 or 2 trips a week before COVID and the self-quarantine started. And our last trip was to California, and that was mid-March. And we went out there for 2 different things that got canceled while we were there. And so we flew home, and every single trip, every single visit that we had planned over the next 3-4 months got canceled, and rightly so, right? So we thought, all right, we still need to be there for our student athletes. What can we do? They're all sent home. They're at home with their families, and maybe those aren't great situations. And we know that people actually are struggling more with their mental health right now because these student athletes, they're not playing their sport. Their senior season or their season got taken away from them. So we decided to take on these podcasts, and we're so fortunate to have everybody calls her the rock star, but she's a sports psychologist out of Ole Miss, and she is the host of the podcast. And she started out doing, I think, 3 podcasts a week, and that's just a lot to do. So now it's down to 2 a week. They come out Tuesdays and Fridays. There's a mental health professional that takes on, what probably most student athletes are dealing with, a range of different things during, self-quarantine and missing their season. And then she talks to student athletes, and those usually come out on Fridays, about their personal experiences and how COVID has affected them. So we're so fortunate to have Josie Nicholson do these podcasts for us, and the producer, Graham Doty, that produces them. And so we still thought, okay, we're going to go back and start traveling again, but there's got to be more, and that's how we came up with 3 days.
So it's funny, you sort of said it the right way. There's a day, there's a day for everything. And World Mental Health Day is actually October 10th, 2020 this year.
Mm-hmm.
And we were playing around, as a group, trying, what can we do? It's a Saturday. There's going to, obviously if there's football in the fall, there'll be something to do there. And last year, what we did is we heard it. And by the way, Chuck, a lot of these great ideas, are not, they don't come just from Kim and I. They come from all of the people that support us and the people that know about this. And it's, frankly, it's the best way to get them sometimes, right?
Yeah.
A cheerleader and a fan had a conversation on social media about, wouldn't it be cool if we held up three fingers to celebrate Tyler? Or, Ryan wears the number 3 too. So at the game, let's do that. What if we did that? And that week, that thing spun up so quickly. We supported it, and it turned out to be 3 and what sort of everything gets called something, right? So 3 in the third, and so after the halftime kickoff, before the offense takes the field, or as they take the field, the fans in the stands stand up, hold up 3 fingers in silence, with sometimes preceded by a PSA that's played over the jumbotron and stuff in the stadium. Sometimes not, but it's there to let the student athletes, the coaches, the fans all know. Yes, it's honoring Tyler because it's the number 3 in some sense, but it's really there to say we're here for you. We get it. We understand this, and it's cheap. It costs nothing. It takes very little time. Everybody can do it. And some of the great feedback we got after that was, a fireman who has been taking his 11-year-old son to games for 10 years, since he was before he could walk, asked him, what does that mean? And they talked about mental health and mental illness and what happened to Tyler, and conversations that particular person and many, many others might not be able to have or have a reason to have. And so they were thankful, things like that.
That's great.
So that happened last year. And I can tell you personally, Kim's heard this before, but standing in that stadium when that happened, for whatever reason, our tickets, for the parents are on the visitor sideline. And my eyes were drawn to Coach Nick Saban. He was the first guy standing up there with 3 fingers. And, I don't know Coach well. Kim's met him on camp tours and stuff, but it didn't. You don't have to. That's kind of leadership right there. So he's in a competitive environment. He's away. He's supporting student athletes. How much better does it get?
That's
our guys,
cool.
we expect that. Coach Muschamp's been awesome. His staff and our AD Ray Tanner, all in. They're absolutely 100% for the kids. So anyway, 3 days. What else can we do on the 10th? Everything has a story, but I'll try to speed it up. Ryan gets a video sent to him. He gets a lot of these, but he got a video sent to him. He sent to me, and there's a Canadian young man named Noah Whalen who put this video together that we're using now as the promotional video with some edits and changes and stuff. And he thought, wouldn't it be cool to put a 3 on the helmet, put a number 3, just for that weekend and celebrate Mental Health Week and so forth. And so after a lot of, discussion and moving around and so forth, we changed it to the ribbon, which is the symbol for mental health, like pink is for cancer awareness. We settled on the ribbon because we thought more people could join in. It's, if you just have the number 3, that number may mean a lot of different things for your team and your correct. So that was a piece. We thought, okay, wouldn't that be terrific for this one game? And so we did this, Chuck. We just basically declared that it's going to be College Football Mental Health Week. And here's what we're going to be doing. We're going to help build the PSAs. We're going to send out these stickers to all the teams that want to participate. And certainly when we get back to campus, we'll help these schools that want our help build additional programming for their student athletes. And I think that's so great, right? The Jen Latta, college football game day, one of the reporters there, she did the voiceover for this video. It's 90 seconds. It's beautifully done. Yeah, and so thank you for asking. But we're really looking forward to that because we've got half of, we've got 10 BYU, almost all the SEC, Middle Tennessee State, and we're working our way west. We just sent out invites to all of the Pac-12, and we're hopeful for a big contingency on 3 day, which for us is 10 to 20. I think it'll be good.
That's great. And then you guys also recently got an award, the Stuart Scott Inspire Award.
Yeah, that's it's a tough one around here because ultimately being awarded because your son died by suicide is not an award anybody wants, right? But we understand enough that it's for the effort put into, using sports and helping sports and being passionate about and really doing something and trying to do something with our student athletes. And we greatly appreciate that. ESPN themselves have done a number of things, including creating what I think is the ultimate, story on Hilinski's Hope when they started it and they released Hilinski's Hope on E60.
Yeah.
So we're very grateful. And Stuart Scott, we told this to them when we found out that Booyah, one of Stuart Scott's favorite.
Yeah.
Tyler had Booyah. He had a bunch of the nicknames, but he followed it religiously, right? He loved sports. His nickname was Sports Center when he was in baseball and stuff, because I always had a knack for those kind of fun plays to watch. So it's such a wonderful kind of acknowledgement. And I think Kim said it in one of our newsletters here recently that it's really an award for all of us. It's not just the Hilinski family. It's all the people that have supported us, and before Tyler died, after he died, and in our effort to try to help other student athletes avoid suffering in silence. So we humbly accept it, and it's a nice honor to receive. We trade it all for.
Sure. Yeah. But I mean, you're doing such great work and you're saving lives and you're really changing things. And like you said, I mean, it's really a generational thing. I don't think this is something that's going to change overnight. It's going to take a whole generation. But now all these young kids are learning about mental illness and the stigma is being reduced. What message do you have for anybody out there listening who they themselves may be suffering from depression or anxiety, or somebody they love or they know is suffering? What steps would you recommend that they take, or what message do you have for those people?
I just put on a sweatshirt right now, and it's actually a United sweatshirt, just Conversations for Student Athletes. And in the microphone on the sweatshirt, it says "Speak Up."
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is what I would tell the person that is suffering. That's what I would tell the person that thinks that maybe a family or a friend is struggling. Speak up, talk, share. Don't be afraid. You're so worth it, and you're so loved, and you matter so much to everybody in your life that you have to take care of your mental health. We say it all the time. You take care of your physical health. You have to take care of your mental health too. It's just so extremely important.
Well, I would only add, Chuck, I think along the same lines, you've probably done it, or we've all done it. You go to the doctor when you got before coronavirus, you get the flu or you're not feeling well, and you show up and they go, wow, you've got a virus. But can I get antibiotics to treat it? Yeah, I can give you them, but they're not designed to help on this, and you leave with sort of drink hot water, or drink water. Drink some soup if you can keep it down, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
sort of the soft. And I used to be, and still kind of feel like, I'm not going to get any better that way, right? And so I think often, as Kim just said, speaking about it, talking about it, asking for help, not letting it, just not hoping it'll away. Oh, it'll get better, because these things, as we understand them, cycle. You have good days and bad days, and your good days you think it's going to be okay, but then your bad days you're not in a great position to ask for help. So get it early and talk about it. The research is pretty clear. You can't cause somebody to die by suicide. There was one case in Texas where the girlfriend kept telling the kid over the phone to do it. And that's a unique circumstance, and I'm not referring to that. Mm-hmm. But in general, are you feeling okay? Do you have any plans if they're talking about suicide?
Right.
Have you made a plan? And there's some training that's very readily available all over the internet that's reasonably good. I would recommend go to NAMI, to their website. They have some some incredible resources.
I'll put
But
that in
here's
the
the-
notes. I'll put that link.
Please.
That's
So, but the important part, I think, it can't be overstated. Don't hope it's going to go away.
Right.
Do something about it. And if talking about it is the only thing you do, that's okay, because that could ultimately be the most powerful thing. It could encourage them. Don't put them down. Don't snicker. Treat it like anything else that you're concerned about, knowing nobody dies from an ACL injury. Maybe they haven't surgery, but this could end up that 123 suicides a day is happening. And at 21 years old, at 10 to 25 years old, there's absolutely no good reason for suicide. Zero. Everything else is solvable.
Yeah,
so don't give up.
Yeah, I agree. And I think talking about it is such an important step, because it's actually a myth that talking about it could cause somebody to do it. It's actually better to bring it up and talk about it. You're not going to give them the idea. I think that was kind of a big myth that I learned, that people were afraid, well, if I bring up suicide, maybe they hadn't thought about that, and maybe now they'll think about it. But no, if people are depressed and suicidal, they've definitely already thought about it. So you're not doing anything harm by actually asking them.
That's super important. You're exactly right, and that's good advice for everybody. There's a lot, in stigma. There's a lot of myths like that, right? That it's important to get to. We run a news cycle a minute around here and different things, and is it true or not true? But factually, get those answers. You don't need a lot of them, but the one you just described, that you can't cause somebody to want to go die by suicide. And the words matter. I mean, Kim and I, we don't say committed suicide anymore. You don't commit cancer. You don't commit ALS. You don't commit a variety of diseases. And you certainly don't commit suicide. It's the way you die. Commit goes way back to when it was illegal, actually, to die by suicide. And so those kind of words are, we're trying to learn as we go along, and trying to bring as little pain to the process as we do it, as we're learning. But I think, as you described, there's a lot of myths around mental illness for sure. And it's important to tell stories like Tyler, where there really aren't a lot of good answers, but the circumstances are very different than what most people think mental illness or suicide looks like. So it's an important story to keep telling.
Yeah, you just never know. It really can affect anyone. I mean, I was a guidance counselor for 17 years, so I worked with kids, middle school and high school, and you'd be surprised at how many kids felt this way, that you would have never picked them out from a lineup. I mean, people always think it's the kid, the emo kids, the goth or whatever you call them, wearing the skulls on their t-shirts and things like that. And yes, sometimes that's true, but a lot of times it's a kid that you would never expect is feeling that way. And I've had a lot of those kinds of conversations. And so I think just having those conversations, and if there's ever a doubt, just ask, like we said, speak up, talk to the person, ask them how they're doing. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right. And Tyler was, we think, got very adept at sort of putting us off the scent, and oh no, I'm good, I'm everything. And then when you find out afterwards that he never moved out of his apartment, he convinced his mom that everything was gone. And when we got there, not only was he dead, but his entire apartment hadn't been touched. There was nothing packed. So he was having a problem even dealing with getting out of that. I mean, you're talking about fast food, pizza boxes, stuff stacked up. This is college, so it's going to be messy. But Tyler wasn't particularly messy, but all this stuff, he was at a point, we think, that he just couldn't get anything done. And I think, knowing Tyler, that compounded so rapidly. He always felt guilty if he didn't do his best, or didn't come home with the right, grades or results or whatever. Not that was a family thing. It was just how Tyler was. He always felt like he had to be the best and do the best. And the fact that he told his mom, I'm 21, I can move out of my apartment, I don't need you to send anybody to do it. makes sense to me from Tyler's perspective. Then seeing his apartment completely untouched, sadly, also makes me think how much he was suffering and what he was suffering with and from. And you can only imagine. You've talked to us too long now to not know. We would have walked to home, jogged, whatever, in a split second for any one of these little tiny reasons had we thought. But if I described Tyler, to you 6 months before he died, and then also added on, I'm going to run up there and have him committed to, have a psychiatric exam because I'm worried about him taking his life, you wouldn't believe me, because that wasn't the case. That wasn't the data. That wasn't what he was putting forth. He's a little sad. He's a little distant. Parents around us go, you're the luckiest people on the planet. You talk to your kids all the time. I haven't talked to my son in 30 days. In a conversational way, you wouldn't ever think this. But let me tell you, obviously, we should have, right? We should have, or we're at least at the point where we're telling this enough time that other people can have the option that we didn't have, which was to jump in and try to do something about it. And you're right. You don't always know what you don't know.
No, I like I said, I worked in the school 17 years. So I work with a lot of parents. You guys are really good parents. I can tell you really cared about all three of your sons, and you're doing amazing work right now. And I think that you shouldn't, feel guilty about taking these awards. I mean, I think it's amazing stuff. You could save lives. So I just worry about you two, that you guys are doing okay. I mean, how are you doing now? It's been a couple of years. It sounds like it's still very tough for you.
It is. I think moving from California to South Carolina, I don't know if it was good for us, but it would have been, we talked about this as a family. It probably would have been too hard because Ryan almost had every Pac-12 offer, I think.
Yeah.
It would have been too hard to watch, Ryan playing the Pac-12. And that wouldn't have been fair to Ryan. He needs to enjoy his college and football experience. And so having him play in the SEC has been good, if that's the right word. It's been good for all of us to just, lift up our roots and try to settle down here in Carolina. We love the town that we raised the kids in. And for some people, like I said, we all grieve differently, but to stay in the house that we raised Tyler in, I couldn't have done it. I didn't even walk back into the house after Tyler died. I couldn't. We just sold the house quickly. And, we moved out here. So we just sort of, it's not like we take one day at a time, because there has been planning, but we don't wake up each day and expect certain things. We make it through each day. And we're fortunate, or maybe we worked hard at it, that we're doing it together. Maybe we're not always on the same, timeline. Maybe Mark's sad when I'm feeling a little bit better, but we're doing it together. Ryan's here. He's downstairs, even though they're back to football and he's not back to class yet. But he's decided to continue to stay with us. And it's a little bit more of a drive for him to get to campus. It's about 20 minutes. But I think us being close to Ryan, having us here in Carolina has been good and necessary for Ryan too. And I think, Kelly moved here as well. So, we're all in the South, of the state we never thought we'd be in, but people are good here to us, and they're kind, and they've embraced us. And
we're being open, Chuck, with you.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not, when we go downstairs and we watch a movie with Ryan, or we go out and we don't go out to eat, I guess, but we go get food, and we go out on the boat, for example, and stuff. It's not just, shrug shoulders and limp bodies and for us. We don't do that. I mean, we've learned how to do it better, I think, but we spend so much time on Hilinski, so Kim does even more so, that we have two other kids that need us, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe they don't need us as much as they want us to be around. So we have to be present for that. And we have to, think through all those things. So we're being very honest about how we think and feel, but we try best we can, and we appreciate your concern, how to manage through it, without ignoring it. I think we have to take our own advice on that, right?
Yeah.
make sure that we're checking in with each other and so forth. But yeah, I think we're doing the best we can, and COVID didn't help, and the racial inequality, unrest, long past due is, none of those things make anything easier, but we're not different in that sense. I mean, we're different because Tyler's gone, and we're just trying to figure out the next best steps. But I think this is always going to be part of it, and I think you're very kind to say, and I think you're right that we're certainly intending to help other people, and if you think about it, it's hard to describe what I think Tyler would have meant as a person still on Earth. His infectious, happiness, smile, all of that. We can't even attempt to replace that with Hilinski's Hope. But I think there's a certain part of us that wants to, right? That we're all a little bit diminished. The sun's a little, less bright because he's not here, and all of those things. So he wouldn't have been in this position. He wouldn't have been, creating mental health programs, I don't think. But his spirit and how much he loved other people and how much joy he brought, we're trying to do something on par that would accomplish what he would still be doing for the next 70 years or so. So
yeah, well, I think you're doing amazing things, and people should all go to the website Hilinski's Hope, and also the NAMI. I'll put that website on my notes as well. Thank you so much for coming on my show. Is there anything else you'd like to say to people, or?
Well, I would add, watch or listen to the rest of your podcast. I enjoyed, I told Kim I was on there looking too, and music and comedians and draft analysts and all that. And so I enjoyed that a lot.
So, good.
So sorry. Yeah.
That's good to hear. Yeah. And I always end with a charity. So obviously Hilinski's Hope is going to be the featured charity for this episode. And I'm just excited to see all the future things that'll do for the 3-day, all this stuff. I got to listen to the podcast that you guys started, the United one. I got to listen to that one too.
They're pretty good. There's great people on it. So thank you so much, Chuck. You should know that this helps us too. And we're very grateful for that. And we're always going to share Tyler's story and our journey and with the hopes that it will truly help people.
That's my goal too.
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming on so much. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care, Chuck.
All right. You too. Let me know if you're ever in Arizona.
We will. Yeah. Okay. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, there you have it. Powerful episode, in my opinion. I'm very proud of this episode. It's probably one of my best. Not that I really did anything. I just, I gave the Hilinskis a form. And the biggest thing I think I did was I just listened. And, I think that's really important. I think if more people did that, the world would be a better place. So, if you'd like to help, you can go to hilinskishope.org. You can read more about the story. You can donate money. You can buy merchandise. There's cool stuff. Try to get involved. If you want to learn more about mental health, you can go to the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI.org. And I'll put these links in my show notes, as always. You can follow Hilinski's Hope on Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. Just reach out to somebody if you need to talk. You can even reach out to me. I do have a background in counseling, so it wouldn't be weird or anything. I hope that everyone has a great day or night, and thank you for listening.